What if devil fruits were never meant to exist in the first place? Not as gifts, not as curses, but as something far more dangerous. Experiments created by someone who tried to control the impossible. Because when you really think about it, nothing about devil fruits feels natural. These aren't just abilities, they rewrite reality. A man can turn into lightning, another into darkness itself, and someone like Luffy can literally bend the laws of physics like a cartoon. That's not evolution, that's design. And design always has a creator. But here's where it gets unsettling. If devil fruits were created, then they were created for a reason. A purpose that may have been buried, erased, or even hidden from the world itself. And the more we dive into the truth, the more it feels like we were never supposed to question it. Because once you realize devil fruits might be man-made, you can't unsee it. For the longest time, devil fruits were explained as mysterious phenomena, something that simply exists in the world, like gravity or the ocean. But the deeper you look, the harder that explanation becomes to believe. Because nature, no matter how unpredictable, still follows patterns that make sense. Devil fruits don't. These powers don't just affect the body, they affect reality itself. Turning into fire or ice might feel understandable at first, but then you have abilities that manipulate souls, erase memories, or even transform people into completely different concepts. That's not something nature casually produces. Those are ideas turned into powers, and ideas don't come from nature, they come from intelligence. And that's where the first major doubt appears. Every devil fruit has a defined ability, almost like it was assigned. It doesn't evolve randomly, it grows in a structured way. There are base forms, advanced usage, and then awakening. That's not chaos, that's progression, almost like a system designed for development. Then there's the strangest part of all. When a devil fruit user dies, the fruit doesn't disappear. It reincarnates somewhere else, carrying the same power. That alone suggests there's a mechanism behind it, something that keeps the system running. Nature doesn't respawn abilities like a game. That's something you would expect from something engineered. And once you start seeing devil fruits as a system instead of a mystery, everything changes. Because systems don't just exist on their own. They are built, maintained, and controlled. Which raises a question most people ignore. Who built it? If there's one thing that quietly runs the One Piece world behind the scenes, it's science. Not magic, not fate, but knowledge. And no one represents that more than Vegapunk, the man who has come closer than anyone to understanding devil fruits. Vegapunk didn't just study devil fruits, he replicated them. Artificial devil fruits exist, and while some are imperfect, others are shockingly close to the real thing. That alone breaks the illusion that devil fruits are purely natural. Because if something can be recreated through science, then it follows rules. And if it follows rules, then it can be understood. But here's the deeper implication that most people overlook. Vegapunk is working with incomplete knowledge. He's essentially reverse engineering something far older than him. And yet, even with limited understanding, he's able to reproduce abilities that defy reality. Imagine what the original creators were capable of, because whoever created devil fruits didn't just stumble upon them. They understood how to convert concepts into physical powers. They figured out how to embed abilities into objects, and somehow they created a system where these powers can transfer, persist, and evolve. That's not just advanced science, that's civilization-ending technology. And once you accept that devil fruits can be studied, replicated, and possibly improved, the mystery shifts completely. It's no longer about what they are, it's about who created them, and why. To answer that question, you have to go to the one place the world is forbidden to look, the Void Century. 100 years erased from history, hidden so completely that even researching it is considered a crime. That alone tells you everything. You don't erase history unless it contains something dangerous. Now imagine this. A civilization so advanced that it could create technology beyond anything seen in the current world. Not just machines, but systems that could alter reality itself. A civilization that didn't just understand nature, but surpassed it. That fits perfectly with what we see in devil fruits. What if this ancient civilization created devil fruits as part of their experiments? Not as random objects, but as tools designed to enhance humans, to push them beyond their natural limits. The ability to control elements, manipulate space, even embody abstract concepts. It all starts to feel less like coincidence and more like intention, but every experiment has consequences, and that might explain the curse of devil fruits. The inability to swim isn't just a random drawback, it feels deliberate, almost like a built-in limitation to balance the power, something to prevent users from becoming too powerful, too uncontrollable, or worse, something meant to punish them. Because if these fruits were created during the Void Century, and that civilization was eventually destroyed, then it's possible that devil fruits are the remnants of that fallen world, left behind, scattered and misunderstood. And if that's true, then every devil fruit user is unknowingly carrying a piece of forbidden history. But here's where things take a darker turn. Because if devil fruits were created intentionally, then they weren't just experiments for curiosity. They had a purpose. And when you look at the nature of these powers, that purpose starts to feel unsettling. The first possibility is warfare. Devil fruits are perfect weapons, not just because they're powerful, but because they're unpredictable. Each user becomes a unique force on the battlefield. No two abilities are the same, which makes them impossible to counter consistently. An army built on devil fruits wouldn't just be strong, it would be unstoppable. The second possibility is forced evolution. What if these fruits were meant to push humanity beyond its limits, to create beings that could surpass normal humans, almost like artificial gods? But forcing evolution often leads to instability, and that might explain why not everyone can fully control their powers. And then there's the third possibility, control. This is where everything starts to connect. Each devil fruit is unique, identifiable, and limited to one user at a time. That's not random distribution, that's controlled allocation. Almost like someone designed a system where power could be monitored and regulated. And this is where the world government becomes suspicious. They don't just fear certain devil fruits, they actively hide them, rename them, and erase information about them. That's not something you do unless you're protecting a secret. Because if the truth about devil fruits gets out, it doesn't just change how people see power, it changes how people see the entire world. By this point, the idea stops feeling like a theory and starts feeling like a hidden truth waiting to be exposed. Devil fruits are not random. They are not natural. They are part of a system, one that has continued to operate long after its creators disappeared. And that's what makes it terrifying, because systems don't just exist without a purpose. They are built to achieve something, and more importantly, they don't stop until that purpose is fulfilled. So what if devil fruits were never meant to be complete on their own? What if everything we've seen so far, every ability, every battle, every awakening, is only part of a larger process, a process that hasn't reached its final stage yet? Think about how devil fruits evolve. At first, users barely understand their abilities. Over time, they train, adapt, and eventually awaken their powers, unlocking something far greater than what they started with. But even awakening feels incomplete. It feels like a door that has been opened, but not fully stepped through, almost like there's still something missing. What if awakening isn't the final stage, but a trigger? A signal that the fruit has reached a certain level of compatibility with its user. A moment where the system recognizes that the power is ready to evolve into something else, something closer to its original purpose. Because if these fruits were designed, then they were designed with an end goal. And that goal might not be individual power, but something collective. What if devil fruits were meant to connect, not just as separate abilities, but as parts of a larger system that only reveals its true function when certain conditions are met? Specific powers awakening, specific users appearing, specific events aligning. That would explain why some fruits feel more important than others, why certain abilities are feared far more than their destructive power alone would suggest. It's not just about what they can do, it's about what they might unlock. And suddenly, the behavior of the world government starts to make more sense. They're not just afraid of strong pirates, they're afraid of something being activated. Something that could expose the truth behind devil fruits, and possibly even restore whatever system created them in the first place. Because if that system comes back online, the balance of the world doesn't just shift, it gets rewritten. And here's the most chilling part. What if someone already knows this? What if there are individuals, organizations, or even hidden forces in the world who understand the true purpose of devil fruits and are actively trying to complete that process, not to destroy the system, but to finish it? Because if devil fruits were experiments, then experiments are meant to reach results, and we might be watching those results unfold in real time. So now, everything comes back to one question. If devil fruits are man-made experiments, then what were they really created for? Not just on the surface, not just as weapons or tools, but at their core. What was the final goal of a system this complex, this controlled, this carefully designed? Because the deeper you think about it, the harder it becomes to believe that something this advanced was created without a final objective. Every detail points to intention. Every rule, every limitation, every evolution stage feels like part of something bigger, something incomplete. And if that's true, then the story we've been watching this entire time might not just be about pirates chasing freedom. It might be about a world unknowingly moving toward a pre-designed outcome, a conclusion that was set in motion centuries ago. And that's what makes this so unsettling. Because it means the characters we follow, the battles we watch, the powers we admire, might all be pieces of a system they don't even realize they're part of. A system that's still running, still evolving, still waiting.